brief statement regarding polls in general, and specifically the poll from WPRI that was released on Monday. And then Abel is going to make a comment on this, what amounts to basically censorship by WPRI of our candidate. Firstly, the WPRI poll, just by the sample size, is inaccurate. 251 voters were polled in Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District, and that is not really a sample size large enough to gain an accurate result. It's less than 0.2% of the electorate in Congressional District 2. Secondly, polls in general are becoming more and more unreliable as people turn to cell phone use, voice over IP technology, etc. The poll that uses strictly the landline, we believe will skew towards the Republican candidate because the folks that are home using landlines are largely the elderly, homemakers, and underemployed and unemployed folks. So we believe that would skew the results toward the Republican candidate. The second thing about polls in general is they don't take into account any online presence, social media. Campaigns are increasingly turning to Facebook and Twitter to get their message out to their supporters and new supporters, and these polls do not take that into account. Lastly, I'll say this. Congressman Langevin has issued a public statement on RI Future about his support of including Abel Collins in the Congressional District 2 debate. But the fact that there's no representative from his campaign here today speaks volumes about what our internal polling is telling us, and that is this. The voters in Rhode Island's Congressional District 2 are becoming increasingly aware of the schism between what Congressman Langevin says and what Congressman Langevin does. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. As my campaign manager said, I'm here to speak today about what is essentially censorship of our campaign in the 2nd District. WPRI, despite the call of more than 900 Rhode Islanders on a petition, despite the call of Congressman Langevin to include us in the debate, despite our democratic ideals that we should include everybody who's on the ballot in the debate, is still continuing to refuse us access to this debate coming up on Tuesday, October 9th. And today I'd like to call on Congressman Langevin, candidate Riley, to not participate in this debate. If PRI does not want to give the citizens of Rhode Island the full information they need to make correct decisions on Election Day, then the people who are part of this process should refuse to be a part of it. Not only that, I would call on our other elected leaders to show their displeasure with this undemocratic process. It should not be up to a corporate news agency who is a legitimate candidate in this race. The legitimate candidate is determined by the people, and we want our voice to be heard. So it's plain and simple. We live in a state where there's an independent man on the top of the State House. There's an independent governor in that office right over my shoulder, and an independent candidate is a viable candidate in a congressional race. The polls have already showed that. More polls will be coming in this race, and they will continue to show that our campaign is viable, and indeed, as we get closer to Election Day, that we are going to win. Thank you.
Actually, I really don't want to take a statement. I haven't planned to anyway.
I'd just like to thank John Matson, who has endorsed our candidate, almost perennial candidate down in Congressional District 2, who's run as an independent, a Republican, a Democrat. Am I missing anything now? But has thrown his full support behind our candidate, and we really do appreciate that. And also we're joined here today by David Vogel, independent candidate in the Congressional District 1 race, who is also being censored from the debates. Again, this is not just a local issue. This is something that's happening on the national stage. Just last night, we had our first presidential debate, and there were only half as many candidates on the stage as there should have been. Jill Stein from the Green Party and Gary Johnson from the Libertarian Party both have ballot access in enough states to give them access to the 270 electoral votes that it would take to put them in the White House. We believe, and it has always been our campaign's position, that if you are on the ballot, whether for national or local office, and you have the wherewithal to garner the votes to get that office, you are a legitimate candidate and you deserve to be in the debates. Thank you.
Can we take some questions?
Sure.
John and would you guys come over so we can ask all your questions? Over in the box, please.
Oh, you want me to go back?
Yeah, in the box up there. John, you've been through this for a long time. Do you see this as a pattern, or is this a one-time occurrence? And can you talk about how this relates to what you've seen in the past?
This just mimics what's been taking place in the press and the TV in Rhode Island on them anointing who's going to be the next congressman or governor or anything else. In there blocking Abel from being on this show is reminiscent of what happened to me last year and this year again, where I polled 26% of the vote, yet I couldn't get on the WPRI show. And that happened 2 years ago when I got 8.5% in the general election, where they make this a habit of deciding who they don't want in the election. And Abel belongs in this election. He belongs on the TV set with the other candidates. And so that's why I drove up to Providence to just to support him and give him some the support he needs, and he needs that from the public also. Thank you.
And what's the percentage threshold has been? Has that been the same every year?
Well, I believe it was always 8% that you had to garner within the margin of error, and I believe they've raised it to 10 this year. So it's a fluid thing that they adjust to the candidate, which I don't think is very nominal. And as we spoke about the internet and what took place last night, no longer is the press becoming relevant, including the TV shows. They're losing their hold on what's taking place, and I hope Abel's going to be the first candidate to really utilize the new technology in the state of Rhode Island to overcome how they've controlled their the election process and the news process.
And David, you're a lawyer. From a legal perspective, how do you view this? I don't know if you use the word morals in this case, but
it's not a moral,
ethics.
it's not a moral issue.
That's the word I was trying to.
It's not even an ethical issue. It is a legal issue, as a matter of fact. It's a little bit technical. I've done the research, but WJR, WPRI, WLNE even, they're actually legally within their rights to exclude candidates from the debates. What they're not within their rights to do, and I've started to do the research, I'm almost more or less done, what they're not within their rights to do is to exclude candidates from being able to utilize the equal time rule. I've done research going back to 1959, and what I found is that from 1959 to 1975, the Federal Communications Commission actually had the rule more or less correct. In other words, the candidates were allowed the equal time rule, or allowed access to equal time as they were supposed to be under the law. In 1975, the Federal Communications Commission changed the rules. The problem is they changed the rules, as I read it, or as I analyze it, in total contravention to the statute under which the rule is supposed to operate. And in the multiple hundreds, in fact, I think I count about 2,200 cases from 1975 until 2012 that have been litigated, and not a single one has ever gone in favor of the candidate. That's what forced me to do the research, because I said to myself, there's no way in the world that 2,200 cases over nearly 40 years, there's no such thing as an exception. What I found is that, legally speaking, the Federal Communications Commission has drafted a rule that literally does not comport with the statute. That is illegal, and at some point I do plan to either file the case myself or in conjunction with another lawyer, file the case to get those rules thrown out, because legally they should be. Passage of time does not validate a void rule. Therein lies the problem. It has nothing to do with the editorial discretion. Thank you.
Yes, and I have a question for Abel, and maybe Dave can answer this as well. Between the Matson endorsement and the are being disenfranchised in the course of if Abel is not allowed to debate?
I can feel this one. I actually have the hard numbers. According to our internal pollster, roughly, given a 9.2% polling rate, we roughly take about 37,000 votes at that point. There are another 49,000 undecided in District 2. And that, I think, is the real problem of us not being in the debate, is the disservice to those undecided voters who are waiting to hear from all the candidates before they make their decision. That is a really big problem in this race with such a, I think there were more undecided voters, 14% or so in that poll, which again amounts to about 50,000 people. And I believe that if we can speak to them, and frankly, if we can speak to the Democrats that are fed up, as our polls are suggesting, with Jim Langevin leadership, and I think our platform really speaks to many of the more moderate Republicans in Rhode Island as well. Rhode Island has a rich history of really moderate Republicans. Ron Makeley, Claudia Schneider, our governor's father, John Chafee, we're all not the brand of Republican that we see today, which is kind of this hardline, free market over everything type of Republican. And certainly a heck of a lot more liberal with their social values. So if we could garner those undecided voters and the voters that are already for us, that puts us at almost 80, a little over 80,000 votes. And again, I think that our platform speaks to disenfranchised Democrats and Republicans that feel that their parties just do not speak to them.
And in a three-way race, would that be a winning number, potentially, or what, you know?
It would put us darn near in the running. So that 80, 90,000 out of 382, if we split it three ways, puts us 26, 27%, which in a three-way race is a pretty strong number. And I think it's just a shame that this our local corporate-controlled media is saying an editorial decision, and to basically go against our sitting congressman's wishes is a slap in the face. It really is. Here's our sitting congressman who says, I would like to see this man on stage, I would like to debate him, and the local media says no for an editorial decision that was handed down long before the polls even came out.
Okay, and a question for Abel here. What is your message to people of why you think it's important to be in the debate? What is it that...
Well, I've said from the very beginning that this is a race that's bigger than me against Congressman Langevin and Michael Riley. This is a campaign really to fight for our democracy. People are being swamped out by all the money that's flooding into our elections, and there's only so many opportunities we have to disprove the theory that money means everything in politics. And one of the ways that we can disprove that is by getting our message out, earning media, appearing on debates, and presenting ourselves in public forums before the public with the other candidates there, which has not been happening in this race so far. This is one of the three opportunities that we were told were going to be there before the whole campaign began. If this one doesn't happen, they've already canceled another one. We're down to one chance left for the public to actually see the three of us on a stage together. So if people are going to be presented with that opportunity to really save our democracy from the money that is drowning out our voice as a people, then I need to be in the PRI debate on Tuesday.
Thank you.